Hi guys.
Hi guys.
Virginia Barnes here.
And Tim Barnes here.
Together at last in a video.
We'll see how this works out.
We're here to talk to you today about common pitfalls with instrument purchasing and how to avoid them. We thought we would talk about these things so that on the front side, you don't make these mistakes. So we have a lot of people come in, and a lot of times it's because their teacher told them they need to come in because they bought something online for very little money, and so then it can't be set up, it can't be tuned. You're spending your entire lesson tuning the instrument and it sounds terrible, so the teacher said, I can't work with this instrument, send it back. So then people come in after that.
I'm going to weigh in. It's not cost effective to have to recut new pegs, new peg holes, plane a fingerboard, put some halfway decent strings on, probably recut a bridge. You're into several $100s at that point. So now you're essentially making a silk purse out of a sow's ear. It's not cost effective. So just because you got this violin for $100, if it needs $700 worth of work to make it work fine, it's still going to be a $100 violin.
And I understand a lot of times people are like, well, what if my child doesn't like this? I don't want to spend a lot of money on an instrument. That's the attraction to getting something online. But just because something looks like a violin doesn't mean that it is a violin, and Mr. Barnes explained that of the problems.
And we have a word for those.
Violin-shaped object. It's known among the industry. So what happens is people come in, they have to do a do-over. They have to start all over again. But sometimes people still are like, but I want to own the violin. And we're talking about fractional size instruments. Anything under full size violin, cello, bass, viola, you should wait, because at this very beginning stage, they're going to be growing, and not only growing in size, but they're going to be growing in ability.
The word that comes to mind to let our valued customers know is the fractional size violins are temporary. They're temporary instruments. You're only going to be on it for a limited amount of size relative to how big your child is. So it does not make sense to purchase temporary violins.
Live to tell the tale. My mom ended up with a closet full of violins. Me and my sisters all played, and I think she thought at one point, well, each younger child is going to be playing, so I'm just going to, buy out this rental. She did start renting, but renting for such a long time, she bought a few, and she thought, oh, well, the youngers will play it. Well, guess what happens in the end? You think, oh, I can sell these. No, that never happened. Had to donate them to a worthy cause in the end. So that's the spiral that happens in the direction that happens. And what we want to do is put you on an arc that takes you from beginning to whatever may happen commitment-wise with your little musician. And even though we could sell you an instrument, we do, as I said in my last video, we wear many hats, and we know what it's like to be a parent, and we know what it's like to have to spend money weighing costs of things. We're going to steer you away from buying a fractional size instrument because, as Mr. Barnes says, it's temporary and your child is going to grow. The beauty of renting a violin, viola, cello, bass from us is that as the child grows, you can switch out at any time. You're renting time, not a particular instrument. You can switch right out to the next size. The record we hold here at the shop, and it was a young lady, switched 3 sizes in 1 year. So imagine if she bought.
The other thing I want to jump in and say is to make it clear also that when you rent an instrument at Barnes Violins, 50% of your rental fee you accrue as a purchase credit that you can use towards the purchase of any instrument. It's not a rent to own. It's much more attractive business model than a rent to own policy. Rental credit gives you much more flexibility and freedom. So I like to make it very clear, especially to dads out there, of which I am one, that when you rent an instrument from Barnes Violins, you accrue equity. You're not just throwing the rent money away.
And in the meantime, too, with the maintenance fee, that's the real deal, is if a string breaks or there's an issue with a bow, normal wear and tear maintenance things, You come in, we swap out the bow or we change the string. You don't have that cost. And we have very nice strings on our instruments, and so you'd be surprised at how much those could cost if you had to replace them yourself.
You don't pay extra for rehairs or replacement strings.
Right. You may start out with what we call our standard rental, because that's the commitment level. And sometimes people only want to start out renting 3 months at a time, because that's the commitment level of, what if my child doesn't like it? After 3 months, fine, then you're done. But over time, you may say, you know what, I want to make some savings and rent yearly. There's a savings there, because you know your child is in for the long haul. Then the next thing that happens is they start winning competitions, or they get first chair in their orchestra, things like that. Well, maybe it's time to switch to an advanced rental, or what we have is a young artist rental. You can ask us about those. And then as time goes on, you're switching size, and finally you're at full size, child maybe around between 10 and 13 years old. You bring the teacher, we have all these instruments here, you go through. The other day, a young man tried 30 violins and he found just the right one. So you definitely are doing your due diligence while you're here. And we have plenty of bows to choose from, because it's not just about the violin. The violin, you can do this all day long. The most expressive thing that you do on this side is your vibrato. We don't hear a thing. Here's your voice, the bow. The bow is very important. You're buying 2 instruments, so you don't have sound without that bow. So once you're ready to buy a violin at Barnes Violins, you have your rental credit. You can bring your teacher in. We love that. And try instruments one by one, match up a bow, find a nice case, and you're on your way. And a lot of times this happens when a child might be between 10 and 13 years old, and that might seem kind of overwhelming, but it's really not overwhelming, because it doesn't have to be the end. Let's say, fast forward to junior year of high school, your child says, I want to do, to some capacity, music at college. Well, they will need to trade up what they have. When you buy an instrument from Barnes Violins, we have a wonderful trade-in policy that we can talk to you about. And you can trade up to something else that would be more appropriate for college and conservatory level. And it just goes on and on and on like that. And we're also here all the way along to maintain your instruments, to do rehairs or restring or repairs. And so what happens is you do not end up like my mom with a closet full of instruments. Every single time there's a new phase with the musical journey, you are pouring things into the next level. And so if you're going to talk counting and every dollar, it's a better way to do it if you're looking at the long term rather than the short term.
Absolutely, Mrs. Barnes. And I'm going to say this too. I think that we can really be looked upon as allies for our customers as they go through the process of moving up with the quality of the instruments that they own and become more serious about things. Our background as players, we're professional players. We have that perspective that we can really be very helpful now with folks when they're exploring getting a better and better and better instrument. We also are parents. We raised sons who both play violin. We've been through the experience as parents and trying to get our kids to practice, et cetera, but at the end of the day, what works and what doesn't work with that whole process. And we've been doing this now for so long that we have a lot of information that's been accrued from trial and error and years of experience, which to be honest with you, there's no substitute for that. One of the biggest payoffs we get is really being able to help parents and students to learn to love the art of bowed instrument playing. And that's one of the biggest payoffs for us in this business.
At this point, we'd like to remind you to like this video and subscribe. We are growing with our subscribers, which is exciting, and getting more and more comments with each video that goes on. If you have topics you'd like us to cover, please let us know in the comments. That's everything.
Thank you guys. we appreciate you checking us out, and if you have any interest in trying out any of our instruments, please just get in touch. My cell, Mr. Barnes, is 561-809-9988, and my better half, Mrs. Barnes, is 561-245-0555. Thank you so much.